The desert stretched endlessly, a sea of jagged rocks and swirling red dust, stretching to horizons where the sky melted into a pale orange haze. Captain Elian Voss trudged forward, his boots sinking slightly into the sand with each step. The sun, relentless and harsh, beat down on his back. He had been walking for hours after the crash of the supply shuttle, trying to reach the nearest outpost that, according to old maps, should have been visible by now. But the desert was deceptive. Every ridge looked like the last, every dune a mirror of the one before it. Elian's throat was dry, the water in his canteen long gone. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand and squinted at the horizon. The faint shimmer of heat rising from the sands made it almost impossible to see clearly, yet in the distance he thought he saw movement. At first he dismissed it, a trick of the sun, but as he drew closer he noticed a figure lying on the sand, half buried in dust. Instincts kicked in. He dropped his pack and ran the last few meters, careful not to fall himself. The figure was humanoid, delicate yet strong, with long limbs partially covered in shredded clothing. A soft glow radiated from faint markings on her skin, faint but unmistakable in the harsh sunlight. Her breathing was shallow, labored, and she was bleeding from a deep wound across her side. Elian's heart pounded. As a medic, he had seen injuries before, but something about her felt different. "Hey, can you hear me?" he called, crouching beside her. He tore strips from his own shirt to make bandages and pressed them gently against her wound, careful not to move her too much. Her eyes flickered open, revealing irises that shimmered with hues he had never seen on any human before, colors that shifted like liquid metal. She studied him with an intensity that made him pause. You have no idea who I am, human," she whispered, her voice soft but carrying an authority that seemed to bend the air around her. Elian froze. He had seen aliens in the archives, in hollow records from colonies, but none of them had the presence she carried. I just want to help," he said carefully, pressing the bandage tighter. "You're hurt. You need water, shelter." He realized this creature, fragile as she appeared now, was powerful in ways he could not imagine. He glanced around. The desert was empty, or at least it seemed. But then he noticed the shadows stretching unnaturally across the sand, shapes moving too fast and too quietly to be natural. His pulse quickened. "We need to move," he said, helping her to stand, though she barely used his support. Together they made their way toward a distant outpost, ruins half buried in sand, the skeletal remains of a place long abandoned by humans but perhaps still carrying secrets from earlier civilizations. As they walked, she kept her eyes on the horizon, scanning with an awareness that made Elian feel ordinary and clumsy in comparison. Who are you?" he asked quietly. "And why do you glow like that?" He had trained for situations like this, but nothing had prepared him for an alien of her sophistication, injured and whispering secrets he could not begin to understand. Yet he could not leave her. The wind picked up, carrying with it the sharp scent of ozone and something else, something metallic. Dark shapes began to appear at the edges of the dunes, moving swiftly. Elian froze, noticing they were not natural creatures. These shadows seemed to shift, almost like smoke given life, circling them with predatory patience. "They are drawn to life," Kaylee said almost casually, "and they are patient hunters." Against these creatures, brute force would not help. He glanced at Kaylee's. Her injuries were severe, but the calm in her eyes suggested she understood something he did not. "Can you fight?" he asked, though part of him feared the answer. Kaylee's gave a small smile, just enough to show teeth. "If I must. But your ingenuity will matter more than strength here, human." He scavenged what he could from the ruins, broken panels, old energy cells, and some containers that still had traces of water. He set up a makeshift triage station for her, cleaning her wounds as best as he could. Kaylee's remained quiet, letting him work, but every so often she would look at him with those shifting eyes, as if weighing him, testing him. Night fell, and with it came the sounds of the desert's predators, but these were not animals. The shadow-like creatures circled the outpost, their forms flickering under the light of the 2 moons that hung over the desert sky. "They are patient," Kaylee's repeated. "They wait until weakness shows, they feed on hesitation." He had faced dangers before, from wild beasts to rogue humans, but this was alien. And yet, even as fear gnawed at him, he felt a strange surge of confidence. Humans were survivors. They had always found ways to endure, to adapt, to fight when the odds were impossible. He adjusted the bandages on Kaylee's arm. "We'll figure this out," he said firmly. "Whatever these things are, we survive." Humans survive. Yet even weakened, there was power in her presence, a calm authority that seemed to hold the desert at bay. By the time the first rays of dawn broke across the dunes, Elian had a clearer understanding of the danger. The creatures were clever, stalking patterns and avoiding direct engagement, testing them, waiting for mistakes. And yet, despite the odds, there was hope. Humans had survived harsh deserts, brutal wars, and the cold vacuum of space itself. Kaylee stirred, testing her strength. "We must move soon," she said. "These ruins will not protect us forever." "Follow me," she said, and for the first time she allowed him to see her lead, her steps confident, guided by instincts that were both alien and precise. They left the ruins, moving cautiously through the dunes. Elian realized the desert was not just a barrier, it was a puzzle, and they had to use every skill, every ounce of human ingenuity to survive. As they walked, Kaylee's whispered fragments of a story too vast for him to understand yet, speaking of civilizations, wars, and watchers beyond the stars. Elian listened, absorbing what he could. The galaxy was bigger, more complex than he had imagined. And yet, in this moment in this desert, survival came down to two things: human courage and adaptability. By midday, they reached a canyon that offered shade and the faint promise of water. The shadow creatures had not followed directly. They were clever, patient, and Elian suspected they were watching still. He set up a temporary camp and helped Kaylee's rest. As he adjusted her bandages one last time before she drifted into sleep, she looked at him with those shifting, otherworldly eyes and whispered, "You have no idea what you have stepped into, human. But perhaps you might be the key." Yet for the first time he did not feel fear, only resolve. Humans survived, and he would survive too. And as the desert winds howled and the shadows lingered just beyond sight, Elian knew this was only the beginning. The canyon offered some shelter from the desert's relentless sun, but it was still far from safe. Elian worked quickly to set up a small camp using salvaged metal sheets and scraps from the ruined outpost they had left behind. Kaylee's lay against a rock, her breathing even, but every so often her eyes would open, shimmering faintly as she scanned the canyon walls. She was resting, but her mind was active, alert in ways Elian could not hope to match. "I need to know more," Elian said cautiously, kneeling beside her as he checked the bandages again. "About who you are, why you were here, and what those things are. But you have helped me, and that deserves honesty, even if partial. My mission is to ensure balance, to prevent war from spreading uncontrolled across the galaxy." "And these creatures?" he asked, gesturing vaguely to the shadow-like shapes that sometimes flickered along the canyon edges. Kaylee's gaze sharpened. "They are scouts, hunters sent to eliminate threats, not random predators. They are intelligent, adaptive, and relentless. They test, they wait, they strike at weakness. So we need to move before they find us." Humans had endured far more hostile worlds, survived catastrophes that could have ended entire colonies, and always adapted. That was their edge, their strength and unpredictability. He glanced at Kaylee's. Even wounded, she moved with the grace and precision of someone who had trained for centuries. But he saw vulnerability in her too, something they could exploit to escape if needed. Together they could survive if they trusted each other. Hours passed. The sun climbed high and then began to descend, casting long shadows across the canyon floor. Elian found a shallow pool of water hidden beneath a rocky overhang. It was barely enough for two people, but it would keep them alive. He helped Kaylee's drink carefully, noting how every motion she made was controlled, precise, like a predator resting before a hunt. "We cannot linger here," she said finally, her voice low. "The scouts will find us eventually. We must reach the ruins of the abandoned city. There we might find equipment, transport, or at least cover to plan our next move." The ruins were several kilometers away across exposed desert terrain. But he trusted Kaylee's judgment. She had not led him astray yet. They set off just as the last rays of the sun disappeared. The desert was transformed at night. Cool air replaced the scorching heat, but the darkness brought new dangers. Shapes moved silently across the dunes. Elian's sidearm hummed faintly as he kept it ready, his eyes scanning the horizon. Kaylee's walked beside him, moving silently yet confidently. "They are watching," she whispered. "Feel their presence. They learn patterns. Humans are unpredictable, which works in our favor, but only if we remain vigilant." He had never sensed predators like this before, not in the wilds of Earth, not in the desolate moons of human colonies. The creatures were intelligent, but humans had ingenuity. He thought quickly, noticing a series of jagged rocks along the dune. "We can use those as cover," he said. "We move from shadow to shadow, change direction suddenly. They won't expect it." And right now, those qualities were the difference between life and death. The trek was exhausting. Each dune felt taller, each ridge steeper, but Alien's determination never faltered. He kept a mental map of their route, noting landmarks, calculating distances, predicting the scouts' behavior. Kaylee's followed his lead in silence, occasionally offering guidance on terrain or warning of hidden dangers. At one point, they encountered a narrow gorge filled with sharp, unstable rocks. Alien slipped once, but Kaylee's caught him effortlessly. "Trust your instincts," she said softly. "Do not overthink." Sometimes survival is reaction, not planning. The stars shone brilliantly above, untouched by the light pollution of distant colonies. Kaylee's paused, looking up. "The galaxy is larger than you imagine, human. Civilizations rise and fall like tides. You are young, your species new, but your potential is remarkable." "I've always thought humans had potential," he said, "but I didn't think it would matter to beings like you. We're small, fragile. You have all three, even now, facing what others would flee from." Once a bustling hub for trade and communication, it was now a skeleton of concrete and metal, half-collapsed towers jutting into the night sky. Strange symbols, carved into walls and glowing faintly, hinted at a civilization long gone. "This place is old," Elian whispered, awe in his voice. "Maybe hundreds of years abandoned. The structures endure because of their design. Some knowledge human is worth preserving, even if its makers are gone." Elian quickly began scavenging what he could, assembling tools and makeshift defenses. Kaylee's moved with him, her energy faint but steadily improving. As they worked, a low hum filled the air. Shadows shifted unnaturally along the walls, and Elian froze, recognizing the scouts' presence before they appeared. "They've found us," he muttered. Kaylee's gaze hardened. "They will probe, but do not fear. You have learned quickly, human. They will respect that temporarily." The first scouts arrived as predicted, silent, shifting shadows with glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. They moved with intelligence, testing, probing for weakness. But Elian's traps activated, capturing a few of the scouts and forcing others to retreat. Kaylee's power flared briefly, and she moved among them with precision, striking and pushing, guiding Elian's actions like a general on a battlefield. When the skirmish ended, the canyon was quiet again. Elian's heart pounded, sweat soaking his clothes, but he smiled faintly. Humans survived. Humans adapted. And together with Kaylee's, they had proven that ingenuity and courage could outmatch raw strength. Kaylee's approached him, her wounds less severe than before, her energy slowly returning. "You are stronger than I gave your kind credit for, human. Perhaps there is hope yet, not just for you, but for all your species. We're not just survivors, we're humans. We endure, we fight, we adapt. That's what makes us dangerous when underestimated. And perhaps it will be because of humans like you that civilizations survive where they otherwise would have fallen." The scouts would return, more cunning, more dangerous, and the galaxy itself waited, watching how humans and their allies would rise to challenges far beyond any single planet. And as he looked at Kaylee's, Elian realized one undeniable truth. Humans were not just participants in the galaxy's story. They were becoming one of its most unpredictable and unstoppable forces. The ruins of the abandoned city were quiet now, but Elian knew it would not last. The desert beyond the walls stretched endlessly, a deadly expanse where shadow-like scouts moved silently, watching, learning. He tightened the straps of his gear and glanced at Kaylee's, who was slowly regaining strength. Her glowing markings flickered faintly as she moved, a soft, almost hypnotic light that contrasted with the darkness around them. "We need to move strategically," she said, her voice low but firm. "If we remain here too long, they will overwhelm us." Humans had survived worse, and now they would survive this. Kaylee stepped closer. "You have learned quickly, human. That is rare. Most would panic, most would falter under pressure. But you," she paused, studying him carefully, "you think, you anticipate. That is why I chose to rely on you." Across the galaxy, other species assumed they were fragile, impulsive, weak. Yet time and again, humans had proven their ability to survive, to adapt, and to overcome when others failed. And now it was their advantage. They spent the day moving carefully through the ruins, setting small traps using salvaged energy cells and old machinery. Elian rigged corridors with pressure triggers, while Kaylee's manipulated faint energy currents to create illusions and block hidden paths. The shadows were always near, but the ruins gave them cover, forcing the scouts to test each area slowly. As they worked, Kaylee's began to share fragments of her story. I am an envoy of the astral conquered, she said, her voice calm. We watch over civilizations, ensuring that balance is maintained. Some species grow too fast, too reckless, and wars spread like wildfire. My mission is to observe, intervene when necessary, and protect the weak when they are truly worth saving. Yet in this moment, he realized that humans were far from powerless. Their creativity, courage, and unpredictability were rare qualities even among advanced species. They underestimate humans, he said quietly. They think we are weak, but they don't know what we can do. You improvise, you endure, you fight when others would surrender. That is strength many fail to recognize. Kaylee studied the ruins and then nodded. There is a vehicle buried beneath the old central tower. It is functional, though it will require energy cells to operate. If we can reach it, we can leave the desert behind. But your ingenuity will matter more than strength. We will move under the cover of deception, using your traps and my guidance. Together, we can reach it before they realize. Elian's traps distracted some scouts, forcing them to retreat or become caught, while Kaylee's created illusions that made corridors appear longer or blocked. Their combined strategy was working, and for the first time, Elian felt the exhilaration of being more than just a survivor. He was a strategist, a fighter, and an equal partner in this dangerous game. Halfway to the central tower, Kaylee stumbled slightly, her strength not fully returned. Elian caught her, steadying her immediately. I can manage, she said, but he noticed the slight fatigue in her posture. You don't have to do it alone, he said firmly. Humans survive by working together, we support each other, that's how we endure. Perhaps I am learning from you as much as you are learning from me, human. I can handle the mechanics, Kaylee said, but the energy cells will need to be charged. That is where your skills will make a difference. Human creativity can solve problems that pure logic cannot. Kaylee's watched, occasionally guiding him with subtle gestures and comments. Within hours, the vehicle was ready, humming faintly with energy, waiting to carry them away from the desert and the hunters that stalked it. Suddenly, a deep, resonant hum filled the air. Shadows moved faster now, more aggressively. The scouts had realized they were being targeted and they were approaching in greater numbers. Elian's heart pounded. This would be their most dangerous encounter yet. We have no choice, Kaylee said. We leave now and we fight only if necessary. Your ingenuity has prepared us. Trust it. Humans were underestimated, yes, but that made them unpredictable. That made them dangerous. That made them survivors. They sprinted across the open courtyard, the alien vehicle waiting just beyond a cluster of broken walls. Elian triggered one last trap, sending a wave of energy pulses across the approaching shadows, slowing their advance. Kaylee's moved beside him, her own energy flaring, creating illusions that made them appear larger, more formidable, and confusing the hunters. They reached the vehicle. Elian scrambled inside, Kaylee's following immediately. He worked quickly, engaging the controls, relying on intuition and the guidance Kaylee's provided. The craft lifted off, gliding over the ruins and the desert sands below. Shadows swarmed beneath them, striking at the landing zone, but they could not follow. The vehicle's engines hummed with power, carrying them upward and away. Once they were safely airborne, Kaylee's allowed herself to exhale. Impressive human, your species' creativity is remarkable. Most would have been trapped or worse, destroyed. But you adapted, you outsmarted them. You survived. That is why your species has potential the galaxy has yet to see. Humans had ingenuity, courage, and adaptability, qualities that could challenge even the most powerful forces. Kaylee's voice broke the silence. We are not safe yet. The scouts will regroup and others will come. But you human have shown me something I did not expect. Perhaps humans deserve more attention than we have given them. But we endure, we survive, and we adapt. That is how humans conquer impossible odds. That is why you will survive tomorrow, and the day after, even against forces that seem insurmountable. And Kaylee's true mission and the secrets she carried were only beginning to reveal themselves. But one thing was clear. Humans were not weak. Humans were not helpless. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of facing dangers no one else could. And together with Kaylee's, Elian knew they could survive anything the galaxy threw at them. As the stars streaked past the windows of the craft, he allowed himself a quiet smile. Humans were underestimated, yes, but that made them unstoppable. And for the first time, he truly believed that humans were not just participants in the galaxy's story. They were becoming one of its most formidable forces. The stars stretched endlessly outside the cockpit, a glittering tapestry of light and darkness. The alien craft hummed steadily beneath Alien's hands as he guided it through the void, but calm was a dangerous illusion. Kaylee sat beside him, her glowing markings dimmed slightly, a sign of her remaining fatigue. She studied the readings on the dashboard, her eyes sharp, calculating. "They are following us," she said at last, her voice steady but carrying a note of urgency. Alien turned to see a faint shimmer on the sensors, a squadron of scout ships, sleek, angular, moving with predatory precision. "They're fast," Alien muttered, "faster than anything we've faced so far." The scouts outnumbered them, outgunned them, and were relentless. But humans survived because they adapted, because they thought when others reacted blindly. This was their advantage. He adjusted the ship's trajectory, using small asteroids and debris fields as cover. The scouts followed, their sensors probing, trying to anticipate his moves. Alien's fingers danced over the controls, improvising maneuvers that Kaylee's had never seen a pilot attempt. Twists, dives, sudden acceleration bursts, they threw off the enemy's calculations. "They do not expect you to think like this," Kaylee said, her eyes gleaming. "Most humans would panic. You anticipate, you improvise. That is your strength." One scout exploded against a jagged asteroid after miscalculating the turn, giving him a small sense of victory. But there were more, many more. Kaylee's reached over and activated a console, sending a pulse of energy that distorted the craft's outline, making them appear larger, more menacing. The scouts hesitated, scanning, confused by the sudden anomaly. "Your species' unpredictability is useful," she murmured. Alien grinned. "We're full of surprises." He maneuvered the craft with precision, anticipating every move, exploiting the scouts' predictable patterns in their overconfidence. Hours passed in a blur of light, shadow, and motion. The scouts were relentless, but so were humans. Alien adjusted the engines, drawing on intuition rather than instruction, using the ship systems in ways the aliens had not anticipated. Kaylee's guided him when necessary, her energy flaring as she intercepted incoming attacks with precise bursts. Finally, they reached a cavernous expanse between two massive asteroids. Alien had noticed the area earlier on the sensors, a dead zone where communications were weak, and enemy coordination would falter. He guided the craft carefully, ducking into the shadow of the larger asteroid. "They cannot track us here effectively," Kaylee said. "Good thinking, human, your instincts are remarkable." Kaylee's tapped into the ship systems, initiating a cloaking protocol that would make them almost invisible for a short time. "This will give us an advantage," she said. "But it will not last long. They will search and they will adapt. We must use this opportunity to strike, to disrupt them and escape entirely. Let's make them underestimate us again." Alien prepared the ship's weapons, modifying targeting systems with makeshift calculations that relied more on intuition than technology. When the scouts entered the ambush zone, chaos erupted. Energy blasts met illusions, decoys misled them, and Alien maneuvered with split-second precision. Several scouts collided with asteroids, while others fired blindly at phantom targets. Kaylee's moved with fluid grace, directing energy flows to intercept incoming attacks and create confusion. Alien's mind raced. Every maneuver was a test, every decision critical. He realized that humans had a unique advantage, the ability to improvise, to think creatively under pressure. It was why they survived disasters, wars, and even encounters with beings far stronger than themselves. The scouts assumed technology was everything. Humans knew differently. Hours passed, but the tide began to turn in their favor. Several scouts were disabled, their systems overloaded or destroyed by carefully timed maneuvers and energy pulses. Others retreated, regrouping, confused by the unexpected tactics. Alien felt a surge of pride. Humans had survived countless impossible odds before, and they were doing it again, outsmarting a foe that should have been invincible. Kaylee's finally allowed herself a faint smile. "You are extraordinary, human. Most would have failed long ago, but you endure, you fight, you adapt. That is why I trust you." "We're just getting started. Humans are nothing if not resourceful." The battle was exhausting, but it highlighted a truth Kaylee's had not fully recognized before meeting him. Humans were not just survivors. They were clever, unpredictable, and capable of turning the impossible into victory. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the edge of the asteroid field. Beyond lay open space, a clear path to a nearby planet where they could regroup, recharge, and plan their next move. The scouts had been scattered, several destroyed, several retreating. For now, humans had won. Kaylee's turned to Elian, her glowing eyes bright with approval. You have done more than survive, human. You have turned the tables on forces far superior to you. That is remarkable. And now I see the truth. Humans may yet shape the galaxy in ways few expect. As the craft sailed toward the planet, Elian allowed himself a moment to reflect. Humans were often underestimated, dismissed as weak or insignificant. Yet here, in the void between stars, facing enemies that seemed unstoppable, he realized something important. Survival was not about strength alone. It was about ingenuity, courage, and determination. It was about using one's mind as well as one's hands. Kaylee's broke the silence. We have survived today, human, but tomorrow will bring new challenges. Others will come, stronger, smarter. Yet I am no longer certain that humans will be powerless. Perhaps your kind deserves more consideration than we have ever given it. Humans survive because we have to, because we endure, because we fight when others would surrender, and that's what makes us unstoppable. Kaylee's presence, her guidance, and her trust had shown him that survival was not about being the strongest, but about being clever, brave, and adaptable. He looked at her, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. Thank you, he said quietly, for trusting me, for believing humans can make a difference. It is not I who decides, human. It is your actions, your courage, your ingenuity. That is why you endure, and that is why your species may yet surprise the galaxy. The scouts might return, more cunning and dangerous than ever, but for now, Elian allowed himself a moment of pride. Humans were unpredictable, humans adapted, humans endured. And that, he realized, made them stronger than almost anyone in the galaxy had anticipated. The planet below grew larger as the craft descended, a barren world of jagged cliffs and vast plains, yet promising a chance for rest and planning. Elian's hands gripped the controls tightly, every movement deliberate. Kaylee sat beside him, her glowing markings brighter than ever, a sign that her strength was returning. She studied him carefully, as if measuring not just his skill but his spirit. This planet will serve for now, Kaylee said. The scouts will continue searching, but here we can prepare. We can plan our next move and learn from each other. As the craft touched down on a plateau, Elian exhaled slowly. The landing was smooth, precise, and for the first time in days he felt a momentary calm. They disembarked, scanning the terrain for threats. The planet was desolate but offered strategic advantages: rocks for cover, cliffs for vantage points, and a network of canyons that could hide them from aerial scouts. Kaylee's followed, her movements almost weightless, her energy steadying. We are not yet safe, she said. They will learn, they will adapt. But you, human, you have already proven that your kind is capable of surprising even the most advanced species. Yet here, in the midst of alien hunters and ancient technology, he had proven something important. Human courage, creativity, and adaptability could match, or even exceed, the expectations of the galaxy's most advanced beings. They set up a temporary camp among the cliffs, using the natural rock formations as protection. Kaylee's began examining the terrain, her fingers tracing faint energy lines in the rocks. There is power here, she murmured. Energy we can use. It is ancient but stable. With it, we can reinforce our defenses and perhaps even create a trap for those who pursue us. Broken alien machinery, combined with the energy Kaylee's had discovered, could be rigged to form a network of traps, both defensive and offensive. The scouts would expect them to hide, but they would not anticipate humans manipulating the environment so cleverly. He began scavenging materials, assembling makeshift devices. Kaylee's guided him, her energy enhancing the structures in subtle ways. Together they worked, a perfect combination of human creativity and alien power. Elian felt a surge of pride, not just for himself, but for what humanity represented. Their ingenuity, courage, and adaptability were unmatched when applied correctly. Night fell again, and the stars stretched endlessly overhead. The scouts were still out there, circling, probing, but they were cautious now. They had learned that humans were not easy prey, that one human could disrupt multiple attackers with clever traps and quick thinking. Kaylee's glanced at him, her expression approving. Your species is remarkable. Most would have perished long ago. But you endure. That is why I chose to trust you. And we fight because that is what humans do. Kaylee's used her energy to reinforce the devices, amplifying their effect. Several scouts collided with the traps, while others were misled into empty corridors and dead ends. Elian guided Kaylee's, anticipating the enemy's adjustments. They moved as one, each complementing the other, human ingenuity paired with alien power. Hours of relentless defense passed, and the scouts began to realize they were facing more than a wounded envoy. They were facing a human capable of thinking faster and acting more unpredictably than any of them expected. Finally, the scouts regrouped, preparing for a coordinated assault. Elian's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his face, but he felt alive. Humans survived impossible odds every day, in deserts, in oceans, in space stations, and now against hunters from across the galaxy. The scouts were about to learn the full extent of human adaptability. Kaylee's turned to him. "It is time. We end this, or at least send a message they will never forget. Are you ready, human?" Humans are always ready. As the first scouts entered the canyon, Elian triggered the traps. Energy pulses surged, walls of light shifted, and illusions created a labyrinth that the hunters could not navigate. Several collided with the barriers, disabled and confused. Kaylee's moved beside him, striking precise bursts of energy that disrupted the remaining attackers' formation. Elian's heart pounded. Every move was calculated, yet instinctive. He guided the craft's energy modules remotely, creating small explosions and diversions. The scouts panicked, attempting to retreat, but Kaylee's power and Elian's traps cut off their exit points. Humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability was deadly. By dawn, the plateau was quiet. The surviving scouts had retreated, regrouping somewhere far beyond reach. Elian slumped against a rock, exhausted but exhilarated. Kaylee's approached, her energy steady, her eyes glowing softly. "You have done more than survive, human," she said. "You have proven that your kind is not weak. You are clever, courageous, adaptable. And that is why humanity has potential far beyond what most civilizations imagine. Perhaps you will shape the galaxy in ways even the astral conquered cannot foresee." He looked out at the desert below, the sun rising over jagged cliffs and casting long shadows across the plateau. The scouts would return eventually, more cunning, more dangerous. But humans would be ready. They always were. They adapted, they endured, they survived. And when underestimated, they became a force unlike any other. Kaylee's placed a hand on his shoulder, her energy pulsing gently. "We will leave soon," she said. "But know this, human, I trust you. Not just your strength, but your mind, your courage, your will. Humans may yet become one of the galaxy's most formidable forces. I will ensure you are not ignored." Humans had survived deserts, wars, and space's endless dangers. They had endured impossible odds and emerged stronger every time. And now, alongside Kaylee's, they had proven that they were not just survivors. They were a force that could challenge the galaxy itself. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for believing in humans, for trusting me. We won't let you down." Elian looked out at the endless expanse of desert, the distant mountains, and the canyon networks they had used to survive. He thought of the scouts, the dangers they had faced, and the ingenuity that had allowed them to triumph. Humans were underestimated, yes. Other civilizations dismissed them as weak, unpredictable, and insignificant. But Elian knew the truth. Humans adapted. Humans endured. Humans survived, and when underestimated, they became unstoppable. Kaylee's guided the craft into the sky, and the planet fell away beneath them. Stars stretched in every direction, a glittering ocean of possibilities. Elian felt a sense of pride, not just in himself, but in what humans represented. "We're not just participants in the galaxy's story," he said quietly, glancing at Kaylee's. "We're becoming one of its most unexpected and unstoppable forces." And when that day came, humans would not just endure. They would shape the future, unpredictable, unyielding, unstoppable. For now, the stars awaited, the universe stretched endlessly, and humans, small but mighty, had earned their place among the cosmos.